First contact with the swarm. Admiral Elena Santos stood at the viewport of the ESS Intrepid, watching the unfamiliar vessel materialize in high Earth orbit. Its crystalline structure defied conventional engineering, fragments of light dancing through its translucent hull. After decades of searching the stars, humanity's first contact wasn't a greeting or a peaceful exchange of knowledge. It was a warning. The alien ship had appeared without triggering a single defense system, its technology so advanced it made humanity's best sensors look like stone tools. But what struck Elena most wasn't its technological superiority. It was the damage. Massive sections of the vessel were simply gone, as if something had taken bites out of its structure. Admiral. Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked with tension. We're receiving a transmission. It's different. The signal's encoded in quantum states we didn't even know existed. Elena straightened her uniform, put it through to the main display. The holographic interface flickered to life, revealing a being that seemed to be made of living crystal and light. Its form shifted constantly, like smoke caught in glass. When it spoke, its words emerged directly in their minds, carrying emotions that no human language could fully capture. We are the Lumini, the being transmitted. We come seeking aid in humanity's unique approach to warfare. Our civilization faces extinction at the hands of the swarm. The images that followed burned themselves into Elena's memory. Entire star systems devoured by a living darkness that moved with terrible purpose. The swarm, as the Lumini called it, wasn't just a military force. It was a cosmic horror that consumed everything in its path, growing stronger with each civilization it absorbed. Why us? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Your technology is centuries beyond ours. The crystalline being's form pulsed with what might have been grim amusement. Precisely. The swarm adapts to and overcomes advanced technology. But your species, you think differently. You solve problems in ways that defy conventional logic, ways the swarm has never encountered. Security Council meetings over the next week were tense. Some argued for isolation. Let the aliens fight their own battles. Others saw opportunity in alliance. But the decision was made for them when long-range sensors detected unusual activity at the edge of the solar system. The Lumini's data proved correct. The swarm was coming. Humanity had 6 months to prepare. The Lumini shared their advanced technology, but more importantly, they listened to humanity's ideas. Ideas that their civilization would have dismissed as too crude, too risky, or simply impossible. Elena found herself working closely with Crystalline Song in Harmony, the Lumini's chief engineer. Together, they developed something unprecedented, the Dreadnought-class battleship. Where Lumini ships were elegant and precise, the Dreadnoughts were brutal manifestations of humanity's approach to physics. Your species, Crystalline Song observed one day, watching the first Dreadnought take shape in lunar orbit, doesn't try to master natural laws. You accept them, then push them to their breaking point. The massive vessel under construction was a perfect example. It combined Lumini quantum technology with human-designed magnetic acceleration weapons that no advanced civilization would consider using. Why build a crude mass driver when you had access to energy weapons? Because sometimes, as humanity had learned through centuries of warfare, the simple solution was the one your enemy least expected. The Dreadnought's main weapon was based on a principle so basic that the Lumini had overlooked it entirely. Gravity manipulation combined with kinetic impact. The ships could literally tear small moons apart and accelerate the fragments to relativistic speeds. It was inefficient, inelegant, and impossible for the swarm to counter because it had never encountered anything so fundamentally primitive, yet devastatingly effective. But their time was running out. Long-range sensors detected the swarm's approach weeks earlier than expected. Elena stood on the bridge of the ESS Thermopylae, humanity's first operational dreadnought, watching the tactical display as the enemy approached. All ships, battle stations, she commanded, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. Initiate Operation Avalanche. The combined human-Lumini fleet moved into position. Alongside the crude but powerful Dreadnoughts, elegant Lumini vessels shimmered like stars. They were about to test their desperate gamble against an enemy that had never known defeat. The void ahead began to darken as the swarm emerged from faster-than-light travel. It was vast beyond comprehension, a living darkness that seemed to drink in the light of nearby stars. Its front line alone stretched across millions of kilometers. Elena took a deep breath. Everything humanity had learned about warfare, every desperate innovation and crude solution, had led to this moment. All Dreadnoughts, begin mass driver sequence. Target the primary node clusters. Fire when ready. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. And humanity, the primitive newcomers to galactic warfare, would help write its ending. Not with elegant technology, but with the brutal simplicity that had served them since they first picked up stones as weapons. The stars themselves were about to learn why humanity's solutions, while crude, had always been effective. The swarm had never faced an enemy that fought like humans. It was about to learn why that was a costly oversight. Project Prometheus. The Ganymede shipyards blazed with activity against Jupiter's massive backdrop. Admiral Santos watched through reinforced windows as construction robots swarmed over the skeletal frame of humanity's second dreadnought. The first battle had bought them time, but not victory. The swarm had retreated, but sensors showed it regrouping, adapting, evolving. The kinetic weaponry proved more effective than our models predicted. Crystalline Song's mental voice resonated with curiosity. The Lumini engineer's crystalline form reflected Jupiter's stormy surface. The swarm's adaptive shields were calibrated for energy weapons, not physical impact. Elena nodded, studying the holographic battle analysis floating between them. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones, but they'll adapt. We need something new. The data from their first engagement revealed both promise and problems. The Dreadnoughts' mass drivers had torn through the swarm's outer defenses, but the inner clusters had already begun developing countermeasures. The enemy learned fast, faster than any biological or artificial intelligence humanity had ever encountered. Project Prometheus was humanity's answer to this evolving threat. Deep within Ganymede's core, engineers from Earth and crystal smiths from the Lumini homeworld worked together, combining technologies that should never have met. The result was something neither civilization would have conceived of alone. Your species has an unusual relationship with impossibility, Crystalline Song observed, watching human engineers install what looked like primitive electromagnetic coils alongside quantum phase generators. You treat physical laws not as absolute barriers, but as challenges to be overcome. Elena smiled grimly. We learned early that survival sometimes means breaking rules you thought couldn't be broken. The heart of Project Prometheus was based on this philosophy, where the Lumini approached faster than light travel through elegant quantum manipulation. Humans had suggested something radically different, using the quantum drives to tear holes in spacetime, then firing modified mass drivers through them. The result was a weapon that could strike from multiple points in spacetime simultaneously, a shotgun blast that violated causality itself. Warning, the facility's AI announced, quantum field fluctuation detected in testing chamber 3. Elena and Crystalline Song rushed to the observation deck. Below them, a test firing was in progress. The prototype weapon, little more than a mass driver wrapped in salvage Lumini quantum matrices, hummed with power. As they watched, it fired a single projectile. The result defied description. The projectile split across multiple timelines, existing in several places at once before reality snapped back into focus. When the quantum fog cleared, the test target hadn't just been destroyed. Parts of it had never existed at all. Impossible. Crystalline Song's form flickered with agitation. The energy requirements alone are met by the reactors we developed for the Mars colonies, Elena finished. Sometimes brute force works better than elegance. But Project Prometheus wasn't just about weapons. Human psychologists and Lumini consciousness shapers worked together to understand the swarm's group mind. They discovered something surprising. The swarm's greatest strength, its ability to adapt and learn, could be turned against it. It's like an immune system, Dr. Sarah Chen explained during a briefing, her hologram floating above the war room table. It recognizes patterns and develops countermeasures. But like any immune system, it can be overwhelmed if forced to adapt to too many threats simultaneously. This insight led to the development of what the engineering teams called chaos drives. Based on primitive human chaos theory mathematics combined with Lumini quantum technology, these devices could generate weapon effects that were fundamentally unpredictable, even to their creators. The swarm couldn't adapt to what couldn't be predicted. As the second wave of dreadnoughts took shape, they carried these new weapons alongside the mass drivers and conventional armament. Each ship was a contradiction. Primitive human engineering wrapped in crystalline alien technology, crude power coupled with quantum precision. We've detected swarm activity in the Proxima Centauri system, Lieutenant Chen reported one morning. They're consuming the outer planets, building mass. Elena studied the tactical display, watching the darkness spread across humanity's nearest stellar neighbor. The swarm was preparing for another attack, but this time they would face something unprecedented. Weapons born from the marriage of humanity's crude determination and the Lumini's advanced science. Begin final equipment installation, she ordered. I want all ships ready for combat trials within 48 hours. As she watched the shipyard crews scramble into action, Elena reflected on how far they'd come. 6 months ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now they stood ready to defend not just Earth, but the galaxy itself, armed with weapons that defied conventional physics. The swarm thought it had seen every possible approach to warfare in its long campaign of consumption, but it had never encountered a species that would take advanced technology and deliberately make it cruder, less efficient, and infinitely more dangerous. Your people continue to surprise us, Crystalline Song communicated. We feared you might be too primitive to help us. Instead, your very primitiveness might be our salvation. Elena watched as the quantum forge powered up, ready to begin another test firing. Sometimes the best way forward is to take a step back. The swarm expects elegance and efficiency. We're going to show them something different. Project Prometheus was almost complete. Soon, the swarm would learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their willingness to try what more advanced civilizations considered impossible. The Battle of Arcturus. The Arcturus system blazed ahead of the combined fleet, its brilliant blue-white star casting harsh shadows across the bridge of the ESS Thermopylae. Admiral Santos stood at the tactical display, watching as the swarm's advanced elements began their emergence from FTL. Behind her, 20 dreadnoughts and 30 Lumini vessels moved into attack formation. Multiple quantum ruptures detected, Lieutenant Chen announced, her voice steady despite the tension. Swarm biological signatures are larger than previous encounters. They've adapted. Elena had expected this. The swarm never made the same mistake twice. The massive creatures emerging from the void were nearly twice the size of those they'd faced in the first battle, their outer shells reinforced against kinetic impacts. But size had its disadvantages. All ships, execute Battle Plan Hydra, Elena commanded. Chaos drives to full power. The human Lumini fleet split into 3 groups, executing a maneuver that would have been impossible before the Alliance. Lumini vessels, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight, created a complex web of quantum fields. Within these fields, the dreadnoughts took position, their crude but powerful weapons systems charging. The swarm responded with terrible efficiency, its hive mind directing millions of bioships in perfect coordination. Dark tendrils of energy reached out, probing the fleet's defenses, seeking patterns to adapt to. They're trying to analyze our weapon signatures, Crystalline Song transmitted from the Lumini command ship. Exactly as predicted. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. Then let's give them something to think about. All dreadnoughts, initiate Chaos Sequence Alpha. The chaos drives activated simultaneously. Reality itself seemed to shudder as each weapon generated a unique and unpredictable effect. One Dreadnought's shot created a cascade of temporal echoes, its projectiles striking the same target across multiple moments in time. Another's blast simply ignored the space between weapon and target, appearing inside the swarm's shields as if the intervening distance had never existed. The swarm's response was immediate and violent. Its bioships began morphing, developing new defensive structures. But each adaptation only protected against the specific attack that had triggered it. The chaos drives ensured that the next shot would be fundamentally different. Energy spike, Chen shouted. They're attempting to breach the quantum web. Dark energy lanced through space, targeting the Lumini vessels maintaining the quantum fields. But humanity had planned for this. The Dreadnoughts' secondary weapons, conventional mass drivers enhanced with Lumini technology, opened fire. Projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds, tore through the attacking swarm elements. Quantum web holding at 60%, Chen reported. But the swarm's adaptation rate is increasing. They're learning. Elena watched as the tactical display updated, showing the swarm's evolving patterns. They were facing an enemy that could analyze and counter any consistent strategy. But humanity had spent its entire history fighting against seemingly impossible odds. Execute Protocol Prometheus, she ordered. All ships switched to manual targeting. No computer assistance. The order caused a momentary pause in the battle. Even the Lumini had questioned this strategy during planning. Remove the targeting computers. Rely on human reflexes against an enemy that fought at quantum speeds. It seemed like madness. But that was exactly the point. Human gunners, their actions guided by instinct and experience rather than predictable algorithms, began engaging targets. Their shots were less accurate, less efficient, and completely unpredictable to an enemy that relied on pattern recognition. Swarm adaptation rate dropping, Chen announced, surprise evident in her voice. Their predictive algorithms can't compensate for human randomness. The battle shifted. Where before the swarm had been adapting with terrifying speed, now it seemed confused, unable to form effective countermeasures against attacks that followed no logical pattern. Human imperfection had become a weapon more powerful than any technology. But the swarm was far from defeated. A massive surge of bioships broke through the fleet's outer perimeter, their forms twisted into new and horrific configurations. These weren't trying to adapt. They were simply trying to overwhelm through sheer numbers. All ships, fall back to secondary positions, Elena ordered. Prepare for close-range engagement. The fleet's formation contracted, Dreadnoughts and Lumini vessels moving into a tight sphere. As the swarm closed in, Elena gave the order she'd been waiting to use. Activate the gravity lances. This was humanity's latest creation, a weapon that combined Lumini gravity manipulation with human mass driver technology. The result was crude but devastating. Focused beams of hypergravity that could tear apart anything caught in their path. The space around the fleet distorted as dozens of gravity lances fired simultaneously. Swarm bioships, despite their advanced adaptations, were ripped apart by fundamental forces they couldn't evolve to resist. No shield could stop gravity itself. Swarm forces are retreating, Chen reported after several intense minutes. They're running. Cheer went up from the human crew, quickly silenced as they remembered their training. Elena didn't join in the celebration. She'd seen the tactical data. The swarm hadn't been defeated. It had withdrawn to analyze this new threat. All ships, maintain battle stations, she ordered. This isn't over. Crystalline Psalm's transmission carried a mixture of awe and concern. Your species' approach to warfare is disturbing, yet effective. The swarm has never retreated from a major engagement before. Elena studied the tactical display, watching the last swarm signatures vanish into FTL. They'll be back, she said. And next time, they'll have countermeasures for everything they saw today. Everything they could understand, Crystalline Psalm corrected. but they still cannot comprehend why humans choose inefficient, unpredictable solutions over logical ones. That, Alina knew, was humanity's greatest advantage. The swarm could adapt to any weapon, any technology, any logical strategy. But it couldn't adapt to human improvisation, to the chaos of human intuition. The Battle of Arcturus had been won, but the war was far from over. As Alina ordered the fleet to begin repairs, she wondered what other primitive solutions humanity would need to devise before this conflict reached its end. The turning point. Titan Base's Strategic Command Center hummed with activity as Admiral Santos studied the holographic display showing the swarm's movements across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Arcturus, and the enemy had changed its tactics. Instead of direct confrontation, the swarm now struck at isolated targets, consuming smaller systems while avoiding major engagements. "They're learning," Alina muttered, watching another colony world go dark. "Not just adapting their biology, but their strategy." The swarm has never exhibited this behavior before. Crystalline Song's mental voice carried notes of concern. The Lumini engineer's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Previous encounters followed predictable patterns of consumption and growth. Alina nodded grimly. "We taught them something they didn't expect to learn. Caution." The tactical display updated as new sensor data arrived from the quantum relay network. The swarm's activities formed a pattern that had been troubling Alina for days. They weren't just avoiding confrontation. They were systematically isolating human and Lumini strongholds. Lieutenant Chen arrived with the latest analysis from Project Prometheus. "Admiral, we've completed the simulation runs. The swarm isn't just adapting their ships anymore. They are recreating our weapons." The holographic display shifted, showing captured footage from recent skirmishes. Swarm bioships now carried crude approximations of human mass drivers, merged with their organic technology in ways that should have been impossible. They had even begun attempting to replicate the chaos drives, though without true understanding of human unpredictability. Their versions were pale imitations. "They're trying to beat us at our own game," Alina said, "but they're missing the point. Our strength isn't in the weapons themselves, it's in how we use them." That night, Alina called an emergency meeting of the Joint Human Lumini Command. As leaders from both species gathered in the quantum-linked conference room, she laid out her plan. "The swarm adapts by analyzing patterns and improving upon them," she began. "They expect us to do the same, to keep developing better weapons, more advanced tactics. So we're going to do something they'll never expect. We're going to go primitive." The room erupted in confused discussions. The Lumini commander's form flickered with skepticism. "More primitive than relativistic mass drivers." Alina smiled. "Much more. We're going to use gravity itself as a weapon, not with advanced technology, but with simple orbital mechanics. Lieutenant Chen, show them Operation Slingshot." The tactical display transformed, showing a complex series of gravitational fields and planetary orbits. It was, at its core, a technique as old as space warfare itself, using planets' gravity wells to accelerate ships to tremendous speeds. But combined with Lumini quantum technology and human improvisation, it became something entirely new. "We'll position Dreadnoughts in specific orbital patterns," Chen explained. "When the swarm attacks, they'll expect us to engage with our usual weapons. Instead, we'll use the gravity of nearby planets to accelerate our ships to velocities that even their enhanced biology can't react to." "You intend to use your vessels as kinetic weapons?" Crystalline Song asked, their form shimmering with what might have been admiration. "The energy release would be catastrophic," Alina finished. "But more importantly, it'll be completely natural. No technology for them to adapt to, no patterns to analyze, just pure Newtonian physics." The plan was risky. It would mean sacrificing ships, something that went against every instinct of the Lumini, who treated their vessels as living beings. But humanity had long experience with sacrificing the few to save the many. Training began immediately. Human crews learned to navigate gravity wells with precision that would have seemed impossible months ago, while Lumini engineers modified their quantum fields to enhance the gravitational effects. The result was a fleet that could turn any star system into a weapon. The opportunity to test their new strategy came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a massive swarm fleet approaching the Epsilon Eridani colony. It was larger than anything they'd encountered before, clearly intended to be a killing blow. "They think they figured us out," Elena told her crews during the pre-battle briefing. "They've adapted to our technology, copy our weapons. Now they expect us to try something new and complex. Instead, we're going to remind them why simple solutions endure." The battle began conventionally enough. The human Lumini fleet engaged the swarm with their standard weapons, appearing to fight according to established patterns. The swarm responded predictably, their bioships shifting and adapting to counter each attack. Then Elena gave the signal. Across the system, Dreadnoughts broke formation, diving into carefully calculated orbital paths. The swarm, expecting this to be a setup for some new weapon deployment, moved to intercept. They didn't realize that the ships themselves were the weapons. "All vessels, execute slingshot protocol," Elena commanded. "May Newton be with us." What followed would be studied in war colleges for centuries to come. Dreadnoughts whipped around planets and moons, each gravitational assist multiplying their velocity. Lumini quantum fields enhanced the effect, creating gravitational corridors that accelerated the ships to speeds that violated every safety protocol in existence. The swarm, for the first time in the war, showed signs of confusion. Their adaptive algorithms could find no technology to counter, no pattern to decipher. By the time they realized the danger, it was too late. The first dreadnought struck at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to a small nova, tearing a massive hole in the swarm's formation. More impacts followed, each one precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption. "Energy readings are off the scale," Chen reported, watching as the swarm's carefully organized battle groups dissolved into chaos. "Their adaptation protocols are failing. They can't compensate for pure kinetic impacts at these velocities." The swarm broke. For the first time in recorded history, the hive mind appeared to panic, its ships scattering in disarray. Some tried to adapt, growing denser armor or generating stronger shields, but against the fundamental forces of physics itself, even their advanced evolution proved inadequate. As the surviving dreadnoughts regrouped, Elena watched the tactical display update. The swarm was retreating, not in the organized withdrawal they'd seen at Arcturus, but in genuine rout. "Your species continues to astonish," Crystalline Song transmitted. "You've done what we thought impossible. You've made the swarm fear." Elena studied the casualty reports with a heavy heart. The victory had cost them ships and crews, but it had proven something vital. The swarm could be beaten, not with superior technology, but with the simple, brutal physics that had governed warfare since the first human picked up a rock as a weapon. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Operation Slingshot is now our primary strategy. It's time to take the fight to them." The war wasn't over, but its nature had fundamentally changed. The swarm had finally encountered something it couldn't adapt to: humanity's willingness to use the most basic forces of nature as weapons of war. Legacy of Steel. Deep in interstellar space, where the light of stars grew dim, Admiral Elena Santos watched the final preparations for humanity's most audacious gambit yet. The combined human Lumini fleet had tracked the swarm to its point of origin, a massive complex of artificial structures orbiting a dying star, where the hive mind first evolved countless millennia ago. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Chen announced, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. The tactical display showed over 200 vessels, dreadnoughts and Lumini ships arranged in a complex formation that would have been impossible months ago. "The swarm's activity suggests they're aware of our presence," Crystalline Song transmitted from the Lumini flagship, "but their response is uncertain. They've never faced a threat at their core system before." Elena studied the sensor readings. The swarm had gathered its remaining forces here, creating defenses that would have been impregnable to conventional attacks. But conventional warfare had long since been abandoned in this conflict. They've built their defenses expecting us to use Operation Slingshot again, Elena observed, noting the carefully positioned gravity disruptors. They're still trying to counter our last strategy instead of anticipating our next one. That was the key insight that had led to this moment. The swarm, for all its ability to adapt, was fundamentally reactive. It could perfect any strategy it encountered, but it couldn't truly innovate. That remained a uniquely human trait. Begin Phase 1, Elena commanded. All ships, execute Operation Dead Star. The fleet split into its component groups, each taking position around the dying star at precisely calculated points. What followed was a combination of technologies and techniques that would have seemed impossible when the war began. Lumini quantum fields interwove with crude human gravity manipulators, creating a web of distorted space-time around the star. Dreadnoughts positioned themselves at key nodes in this web, their mass drivers modified to fire specialized projectiles developed by Project Prometheus. The swarm reacted immediately, its bioships swarming outward in attack formations that had been perfectly evolved to counter every tactic humanity had previously employed. But this time, the human Lumini fleet didn't engage directly. All ships, initiate stellar manipulation sequence, Elena ordered. The dying star at the system's heart began to pulse erratically as hundreds of gravity beams struck its surface simultaneously. This wasn't the elegant stellar engineering the Lumini had once employed, nor was it the brute force approach humans had initially favored. It was something new, a technique born from the desperate innovation of a species fighting for survival. Stellar core destabilization at 30%, Chen reported. The swarm is responding. They're adapting their ships to withstand the increased radiation. Elena had expected this. Execute Phase 2. The fleet's formation shifted, maintaining the gravity web while dreadnoughts began firing their mass drivers. But instead of targeting the swarm directly, they fired into carefully selected points in space, where the gravity web was strongest. The projectiles, enhanced by Lumini quantum technology, didn't just travel through the distorted space. They tore holes in it. Each impact created a cascade of gravitational anomalies that the swarm couldn't predict or adapt to. Their outer defenses are collapsing, crystalline song transmitted, but the hive mind remains protected within their central structure. That structure, a massive crystalline lattice that seemed to drink in light, was where the swarm had first achieved consciousness. It was also their final vulnerability. All ships prepare for Phase 3, Elena commanded. This ends today. What followed was warfare on a scale never before attempted. The dying star, its core destabilized by the gravity web, began to collapse. But rather than allow it to become a supernova or black hole, the combined fleet used their gravity manipulators to channel its death throes. The swarm, finally recognizing the true threat, launched everything they had at the fleet. Bioships by the thousands rushed forward, their forms twisted into weapons of incomprehensible complexity. But humanity had one final lesson to teach them about warfare. Execute Final Protocol, Elena ordered. All ships, activate your chaos drives at maximum power. The chaos drives, humanity's most unpredictable weapons, activated simultaneously. But instead of generating random effects, they were synchronized through the gravity web, their quantum fluctuations amplifying each other. Reality itself seemed to shudder as natural laws briefly ceased to function normally. The dying star's energy, channeled through the gravity web and amplified by hundreds of chaos drives, created a weapon that defied conventional physics. The swarm's central structure, for all its advanced defenses, had no protection against what was essentially a localized breakdown of cause and effect. Their hive mind, which had evolved to understand and counter any weapon, faced something it couldn't comprehend, the weaponization of chaos itself. Energy readings are impossible, Chen reported, her voice filled with awe. The entire structure is. The center of the swarm's empire didn't explode or collapse. It simply ceased to maintain consistency with normal spacetime. The hive mind, which had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, found itself trying to adapt to something that couldn't be adapted to, the fundamental unpredictability of human warfare. Across the battlefield, swarm ships began to fail as their connection to the hive mind was severed. Some simply stopped moving, while others reverted to primitive biological impulses. "It's done," crystalline song transmitted after several tense minutes. "The hive mind is gone. The swarm is no more." Elena watched as the tactical display confirmed what they'd achieved. Humanity, the newcomers to galactic warfare, had succeeded where countless advanced civilizations had failed, not through superior technology or elegant solutions, but through their unique ability to embrace chaos and unpredictability as weapons. "Send word to Earth and the Lumini homeworld," she ordered. "The war is over." As the fleet began recovery operations, Elena reflected on how this victory would change the galaxy. Humanity had proved that technological advancement wasn't everything. Sometimes the oldest principles of warfare, combined with the willingness to try the impossible, were more powerful than any advanced technology. "Your species has changed everything," Crystalline Song observed. "The galaxy will never be the same." Elena nodded, watching as her crews began the long process of standing down from battle stations. "We didn't just win a war today," she said. "We proved that there's always another way to solve a problem, even if that solution seems primitive or impossible." The legacy of this conflict would echo through history, not just as a victory over an implacable enemy, but as a testament to humanity's greatest strength, the ability to face the impossible and find a solution that no one else would even consider. The stars themselves had learned what it meant to face humanity in battle, and the galaxy would never forget.